The mysterious arrival. The girl sat quietly in the dimly lit shelter, her heart pounding in her chest. She had been here for what felt like an eternity, hidden away from the world above. The shelter, buried deep beneath the Earth's surface, was a place no one knew about. A secret only a few humans knew to protect her. Her eyes flickered toward the small, cracked window at the far end of the room. From this spot she could barely see the light from the outside world, but tonight something felt different. A strange, almost electric chill filled the air. The hum of the shelter's old lights buzzed louder than usual, as though they were struggling to keep up with the heavy silence that surrounded her. Suddenly she heard it, soft, slow footsteps echoing from above. Her heart skipped a beat. She knew what that sound meant. Someone was walking nearby and they were getting closer. She had to remain still, quiet as a mouse. Her body tensed, instinctively pressing herself deeper into the shadows. The girl had learned long ago how to stay hidden, how to stay quiet. But tonight felt different. A voice, distant yet chilling, broke the silence. It was muffled, coming from above, but she could make out the words, "I know you're here." Her breath caught in her throat. How could they have found her? The girl's mind raced back to the time when she first came here. She was not human. She wasn't even from Earth. She was an alien, forced to hide from the humans who wanted her, captured. She had been sent here for her own protection, a secret shelter to keep her safe, hidden away from those who might harm her. But now, someone had found her. Someone who seemed to know exactly where to look. She tried to calm her racing thoughts, forcing herself to breathe slowly. The footsteps grew louder, growing closer to the shelter. The girl knew the shelter was secure, nearly impossible for anyone to break into, but that didn't stop the fear that bubbled up inside her. She had been hiding for so long, never knowing if anyone would come looking for her. Now, someone was here, and she wasn't sure if they were friend or foe. The door to the shelter creaked as it shifted, and for a split second, the girl thought she could see a figure through the thin crack of the door. The shadows moved, and she heard a voice again, closer this time. "I know you're in there." Panic surged through her, but she forced herself to stay calm. She had been trained for moments like this. She had learned how to stay silent, how to remain unseen. This was her home now. No one could find her. She reached for the small hidden weapon under her bed, a simple knife, but one she had used many times before. She wasn't sure if it would help her in a situation like this, but it made her feel safer. The figure outside paused. She held her breath, her hands tightening around the knife's handle. Then, without warning, the door to the shelter slowly began to open. The girl froze. This was it. Whoever it was, they had found her. The footsteps were closer now, and she could hear the sound of someone's breathing. The girl's heart hammered in her chest. She wasn't sure what was about to happen, but she knew one thing for certain. Her world was about to change. A bitter past, the girl remained hidden in the shadows, her breath shallow, her body tense. Outside the small shelter, the world above, was still, but beneath the air was thick with the weight of uncertainty. Her mind drifted back to the day everything changed, back to when she first arrived on Earth. She wasn't supposed to be here. She wasn't supposed to be alone, hiding from the very species that once threatened her people. How had it come to this? Her memories flickered like a broken film reel, images of a far-off planet that felt like a distant dream now. A peaceful place filled with towering structures of green and silver, where the stars were close enough to touch. It had been her home, a home that no longer existed. She had been one of the last survivors of her kind, and the humans had no idea what they had unleashed when they stumbled upon her. It was an accidental encounter. A human exploration ship, far beyond the reaches of Earth's orbit, had intercepted a distress signal from her planet. They arrived not knowing what they would find, but when they did, it was already too late. The invaders had left her world in ruins, and she had been forced to flee. She had escaped, her ship damaged, her body, battered, and then, finally, the humans had captured her. But the humans weren't the real threat. Not at first, it was the ones who came after her, the ones who had followed her through the vast expanse of space. Her people had been fighting back, but Earth, this strange, violent planet, had been their last hope. And it had turned into a trap. She had barely escaped from her own kind's enemies before finding her way to this secret shelter, hidden far beneath Earth's surface, a place where she could hide, a place where she could survive. But it wasn't just the danger from her own people that haunted her. It was the memory of him, the one who had saved her, the man who had hidden her here, the one who had promised to protect her. She remembered his face vividly, a man with sharp eyes, weathered skin, and an air of confidence. He had been part of a secret government mission to keep her safe. He had sworn an oath to protect her from the war that was brewing, from the alien forces that were hunting her. He had been kind, at least in the beginning, but as time passed, she began to see the cracks in his facade. She remembered the day he left her for the first time. Without warning, he disappeared. No messages, no explanation. He simply vanished. She waited, alone in the shelter, wondering if he would ever come back. Days turned to weeks, then weeks into months. The girl couldn't help but wonder if he had betrayed her, if he had left her to face the dangers alone. The uncertainty ate away at her, and the pain of being abandoned began to burn deep within her soul. And now, here she was again, hiding, in the same shelter, waiting for someone who might have been her only chance of survival. Could she trust him again? She wasn't sure. The soft sound of footsteps outside the shelter door interrupted her thoughts. The girl's heart began to race once more. She peered out from the shadows, her fingers gripping the knife tightly. Would she ever find the answers she was looking for? Or was she destined to remain hidden, lost in the dark corners of this alien world? The stranger's footsteps. The shelter was eerily silent except for the soft, rhythmic thud of her heartbeat. The girl's eyes were wide, her body frozen in place, barely daring to move. She could feel the presence of someone just outside. The footsteps were unmistakable, slow, deliberate, as if they were trying to mask their arrival. But there was no hiding the fact that someone was coming closer. It wasn't just any person. It wasn't even the kind of man she had expected. The girl's fingers tightened around the knife, her knuckles white. Her mind raced. Who was he? The stranger's steps grew louder, echoing in the stillness of the underground shelter. Each step felt like a warning, a reminder that she wasn't safe no matter how secure she thought her hidden world had been. She pressed herself deeper into the shadows, knowing she had to stay hidden. The shelter was her only refuge, and yet, she felt more exposed than ever. Through the small crack in the door, she caught a glimpse of movement, a shadow shifting in the dim light. A tall figure stood just outside, his back turned to the door. His presence was imposing, and yet there was something about him that felt oddly familiar. The girl's heart skipped a beat. Could it be him? Her mind flashed back to the man she had once trusted, the one who had promised to keep her safe. But that man was long gone. She had seen the lies in his eyes before he disappeared. No, this couldn't be him. But the man standing outside was no stranger. His posture, the way he moved, the slight, almost imperceptible tension in his shoulders, it all seemed like a warning. He wasn't here by accident. He knew exactly where to look. For a moment, time stood still. The girl's breath hitched as the man turned toward the door, his face hidden in shadow. He muttered something under his breath, too soft for her to hear clearly, but the words sent a chill down her spine. The girl couldn't make them out, but there was no mistaking the sense of urgency in his voice. He was searching for something, or someone. The door creaked again, and the man stepped closer, inches away from where she hid. She could hear the slight scrape of his boots against the ground, the soft sigh of his breath. He paused. The silence between them stretched out, thick and heavy. He stood there as if waiting for something, perhaps a sign, perhaps a movement. The girl held her breath, not daring to make a sound. She knew that any noise, any slight movement could give her away. She had been trained to stay silent, to wait until the time was right. But the longer she stayed still, the more the fear gnawed at her. What if he wasn't here to protect her? What if he was one of them, the ones who had been chasing her all along? Suddenly, the man's voice broke the tension. "I know you're in there," he said, his voice calm but firm. There was no anger, no urgency, just the cold certainty that he had found what he was looking for. The girl's heart skipped a beat. She clenched the knife tighter, her fingers numb. This was it, the moment she had feared. She was about to face the very thing she had been hiding from for so long. The stranger's footsteps grew quieter, as though he was stepping away. For a moment, the girl allowed herself to breathe. But then, just as quickly, the sound of the door handle rattling reached her ears. He was going to open it, and there was no way out. A silent battle of wits. The girl's mind raced, her thoughts sharp and focused as the stranger's presence lingered just beyond the door. The silence between them had thickened, each second stretching into what felt like an eternity. She could hear the faint rustle of his clothing as he shifted, each movement a puzzle piece she had to decipher. Was he a threat? Or was there more to his story than what the shadows suggested? She could not afford to make a mistake. Every instinct told her to stay still, to stay hidden, but there was a nagging sense, a feeling deep in her gut that urged her to act, to make her presence known. But how? How could she reveal herself without giving away everything? The door creaked again, and the girl's eyes darted to the shadows beyond her shelter. She could sense the man's eyes, as if they were scanning the space, looking for any sign of movement. Every inch of this shelter was her world, her hiding place, yet now it felt like it was shrinking, closing in around her. Think. She couldn't just wait. She had been trained to anticipate every move, every moment, and now she had to outwit him. A slight scrape of metal against metal echoed through the room. The stranger was fiddling with the lock. She saw the faintest outline of his hand through the crack in the door. He wasn't in a rush. He was methodical, cautious. He wasn't here to make a mess, he was here to find her. And the longer he spent trying to figure out how to break into her world, the more she understood. This wasn't just a simple search. This was a carefully calculated maneuver. He had been planning this. Her grip on the knife tightened, her knuckles aching. She hadn't had to fight in years, not since the day she had been forced to flee her planet, forced to hide. But now she had no choice. She had to be ready. He was getting closer. A strange, muffled sound broke her concentration, drawing her eyes back to the door. The man was speaking, but his voice was too soft, too low for her to hear clearly. His words were like a whisper, barely audible over the hum of the shelter, but there was something in the tone that sent a chill down her spine. He knew about her. Her heart clenched in fear. How? How did he know who she was? She had thought she was hidden, safe from the human world. She had thought she was protected by the secrecy of this underground refuge. But now here he was, someone who seemed to know more than he should. The game had changed, and she was no longer just a frightened alien on the run. She was a pawn in something much larger than herself. The girl's mind shifted gears. She had to make a choice, and it had to be now. The longer she waited, the more control the man gained over the situation. She had to take the lead. Slowly, she rose from her crouching position, every muscle in her body screaming with tension. She didn't make a sound. The knife was still in her grip, her movements deliberate. She needed to assess him to understand what kind of danger he truly posed. She could not act blindly. The girl crept toward the crack in the door, careful not to make a sound. She could feel his presence like a shadow cast upon the world outside. But she had one advantage. She knew this shelter better than anyone. She could use its secrets against him. Her fingers brushed the hidden switch on the side of the wall, activating a set of hidden surveillance cameras that showed the room outside. The image flickered, showing the man standing just outside her door, seemingly unaware of the cameras. There he was, the man who had tracked her down. But why? The girl could see the answers hidden in his eyes, but she needed more than just a glimpse. She needed him to reveal his hand, to make a mistake. Then, and only then, would she make her move. The game was on, and now it was her turn to play. The hidden truth. The tension in the air was almost unbearable. The girl stood frozen, watching through the crack in the door, her breath barely audible. The man was still standing just outside, his back turned toward her, as if he was waiting for something. Or someone. His every movement was deliberate, controlled, but there was a hidden urgency in the way he paced. It was as if time was against him, and perhaps against her, too. The girl's heart raced. She had known this moment was coming, but now that it was here, it was far more complicated than she could have ever imagined. She had to act, but she wasn't sure how. Was this man her enemy or something else entirely? He certainly wasn't like the others who had hunted her in the past. There was a strange pull between them, something that felt familiar. The way he carried himself, the way he searched for something in the shadows. It almost felt as if he was looking for her, not to harm her, but to understand her. She let out a silent breath, the knife still clutched tightly in her hand. But this wasn't a time for fighting, not yet. She needed answers, and she was about to get them. Without warning, she stepped out from the shadows, her voice cutting through the silence. Who are you? The stranger's body tensed. His head snapped toward her, his eyes wide with surprise, but there was no fear. Instead, there was a flash of recognition, a moment where their gazes locked and everything else seemed to fade away. It was a look she had seen before, back when she was still a part of a different world, before she was forced to run. The man's lips parted, but no words came out at first. He seemed to be gathering his thoughts, trying to process the sudden change in the situation. Finally he spoke, his voice low but steady. I didn't expect you to reveal yourself so soon. The girl narrowed her eyes, her grip on the knife still firm. What do you want from me? His eyes softened for a fraction of a second, then hardened again, his expression turning serious. I've come to find you, to help you. The world above has changed, and you're the key to stopping what's coming. She blinked, confusion flooding her mind. Help her? The key? She didn't understand. She had been hiding for years, terrified of being found, of being exposed to the ones who had hunted her. And now, here he was, saying that she was the key to saving them all. The silence between them grew thicker, each second stretching out into the unknown. The girl studied him carefully, trying to find any trace of deception in his words, but his expression remained unreadable. There was no malice in his voice, no hint of betrayal. He seemed genuine, but how could she be sure? Why should I trust you? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper, as if speaking too loudly might break the fragile thread of understanding they had begun to weave. The man took a step forward, but slowly, cautiously, as though respecting the space between them. You don't have to trust me yet. But you need to know something. The people who came after you, the ones you thought were gone, they're not. They found a way to track you, to find you. And they're coming. The girl's blood ran cold. She had hoped, prayed, that they were just a distant memory, a nightmare she could leave behind, but hearing him confirm it, hearing him speak of her enemies as if they were already at her door, shattered her fragile sense of security. She stepped back, the knife now trembling slightly in her hand. I'm not ready to face them, she whispered, more to herself than to him. I've been hiding for so long, I don't know how to fight back anymore. For the first time since he arrived, the man's expression softened. His eyes filled with something that resembled sympathy. You don't have to do it alone, he said quietly. That's why I'm here. To help you. To help us. The girl stared at him, searching his face for any sign of doubt, any hint of a lie. But there was none. This man, this stranger, was offering her something she had never imagined. A chance to fight back. To face the past she had been running from. To stop the forces that had destroyed everything she once knew. But at what cost? I'm not sure I can trust anyone again, she said, her voice barely audible. Not after everything I've been through. The man nodded slowly, understanding in his gaze. I don't expect you to trust me right away, but you will in time. The girl's heart beat loudly in her chest. The choice was hers now. Stay hidden, keep running, or take a step into the unknown with a man who seemed to understand her. Struggle in a way no one else had. The answer seemed so simple yet so terrifying. The moment of truth had arrived, and she was no longer sure if she was ready to face it. The truth about the shelter. The air in the shelter was thick with tension, heavier now than ever before. The girl felt the weight of the man's words pressing down on her, but she couldn't make sense of them. She stared at him, her mind struggling to process what he had just revealed. They're coming. They've found me. The thought repeated in her head like a drumbeat, each pulse of panic louder than the last. The man had offered her a lifeline, but how could she trust him? How could she trust anything after all the lies, all the broken promises? And yet, there was something about him, the way he stood there, his eyes unwavering, that made her feel, for the first time in years, that she wasn't completely alone. He took a step forward, his gaze steady. You've been safe here, in this shelter, but the truth is, it's not enough anymore. Her heart skipped a beat. She had always known this place was temporary. The shelter had been a stopgap, a hiding place when the world above had seemed too dangerous. But to hear the man say it so plainly, as though the walls she had relied on for so long were no more than an illusion, sent a chill down her spine. What do you mean? She asked, her voice trembling despite her best efforts to remain calm. The shelter, he began, his voice low, was built to protect you, but it wasn't meant to keep you hidden forever. There are people, powerful people, who have been monitoring this place, tracking your every move, and their technology is far beyond what you've seen. Your enemies aren't just looking for you in the usual ways. They've evolved. They've adapted. The girl felt a knot tighten in her stomach. This wasn't just a matter of hiding. This was bigger than that. She had never understood the full scale of the conflict, only that she had to stay out of sight, keep herself safe. But now, it seemed the very thing that had kept her hidden was becoming her greatest threat. I thought I was safe, here, she whispered more to herself than to him. I thought the shelter was impenetrable. The man's expression softened, though there was no comfort in his eyes. The shelter was designed with the best technology available. But no, place is truly safe, and now that they've figured out how to track you, how to find you no matter where you hide, staying here is just buying time. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. I'm telling you this because you need to understand what's at stake. The shelter isn't just a place for protection anymore, it's a tomb, and sooner or later they will breach it. The girl's breath caught in her throat. Her hands clenched at her sides, but the knife felt heavy now, useless in a situation that was spiraling beyond her control. The walls she had once relied on felt like they were closing in, pushing her toward a terrifying unknown. But how? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. How are they tracking me? I thought they couldn't find me. I thought this place was off their radar. The man took a deep breath, clearly reluctant to explain further. He looked down at his feet for a moment as if gathering his thoughts, then met her eyes once more. You were hidden, yes. But the technology that built this shelter, the systems that protected you, they weren't foolproof. The deeper you hide, the more energy you use to stay hidden, and every energy signal, every scan, every anomaly is a signal for them to follow. It's only a matter of time before they trace it back here. The girl felt the ground beneath her feet shift. For the first time, the full scale of what she was up against hit her. It wasn't just her enemies finding her. It was a relentless system, an entire network that would stop at nothing to track her down. And no shelter, no matter how secure, would be enough to keep her hidden forever. So, what now? She asked, her voice steady but with an undercurrent of fear she couldn't entirely hide. The man's eyes hardened, determination flooding his gaze. Now we leave. We move to the next phase. I'll help you get out of here before they find this place. We have to get you somewhere safe, somewhere they won't be able to follow. The girl's stomach dropped. Leaving the shelter meant stepping into the unknown, into a world that had been hostile to her since the moment she arrived. But staying here meant certain death. Where will we go? she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The man hesitated for only a second, then nodded toward the dark corridor behind her. There's a place. A safe house, hidden from the main network. But we'll have to move fast. And once we leave, there's no turning back. The girl felt the weight of his words settle over her like a shroud. She had no choice now. She had been running for so long, hiding from her past, from the world that wanted to destroy her. But the time for running was over. She had to face whatever came next. And whatever it was, she wasn't alone anymore. The final decision. The girl stood at the edge of the shelter, the walls she had trusted for so long now feeling more like a trap. The shelter's sterile, dimly lit corridors had once been her sanctuary, but now they seemed like the very thing that had kept her prisoner. The man's words echoed in her mind, his promise to help her escape, to protect her from the inevitable confrontation with the forces that had been hunting her. But as she stared into the darkened passage ahead, a gnawing doubt crept into her heart. Was she ready to face what lay beyond? She turned to look at the man, his face set with determination. There was no hesitation in his eyes, no sign of fear. He knew what he was doing, and he had come prepared for this moment. But the girl's heart raced. She had spent so many years hiding, so many years avoiding the truth. What if leaving this place meant she could never go back to the life she had once known? What if, out there, in the vast unknown, the danger was even worse than she feared? "You're sure this is the right move?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper, as though saying it aloud might somehow make the decision feel too real. The man met her gaze, his expression unshaken. "I'm sure. If we stay here, they'll find us. We can't outrun them by hiding anymore. It's time to take the fight to them." The girl's fingers twitched around the knife still in her hand. It wasn't much, but it was all she had. A faint reminder of the survival instincts she had been honing for years. Yet, in this moment, it felt inadequate, too small to face the enormity of what was coming. For the first time, she felt the weight of her decision. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about taking control of her fate, of stopping the endless cycle of fear and running. She could keep hiding, yes, but that would only make her a shadow, forever running from the people who had already found her. Or she could step into the light, face her enemies head-on and take back what she had lost. The shelter had been her protection, but it was also her cage. "Where are we going?" she asked, her voice firmer now, the uncertainty in her chest slowly transforming into resolve. The man glanced at the dark hallway leading away from the shelter and nodded. "There's a place, a stronghold of sorts, hidden in plain sight. A few people know about it, people you can trust. Once we're there, we'll have a chance to regroup, to figure out what our next move is." Her mind raced. Images of her past flashing through her thoughts, the world she had left behind, the people she had known. She had always been a fighter, always trying to find a way out, a way to survive. But this was different. She was no longer running. She was taking the fight to them, and the stakes were higher than ever. Her grip on the knife loosened slightly, but her resolve hardened. If she was going to do this, she needed to do it fully. No more hesitation, no more looking back. She wasn't going to let fear control her anymore. She took a step forward, her footfalls echoing through the silence of the shelter. The man followed her, his presence a quiet reassurance. There was no turning back now. "Let's go," she said, her voice steady, her heart beating with an unfamiliar rhythm, one that told her she was no longer a prisoner of her past. She was ready to face whatever came next. As they walked down the dark corridor, the door to the shelter creaked closed behind them, and for the first time in years, the girl felt the weight of the world lifting from her shoulders. The battle for her future had just begun,